point, even princes get tired of those phone calls. At some point. And what we're going to see is when you, and this is the kind of, if you want to look for the, when you see this on the horizon, there will be other things. When you see Citibank's liquidity reserves called into question, I think you're going to see a significant alteration in our geopolitical stands among our, quote, friends and allies in the region. That's going to be a big shift because they have already bet against us. They have already bet against us. They've bet in African oil contracts. They've bet in natural gas contracts throughout the entire region. They have bet in South America on things that are not quite our favor. Places like Venezuela, places like Morales, places like Brazil. These kinds of places are where you actually already see both Middle Eastern and China and Russia placing their bets. We're not there because ideologically we don't want to be there. Well, guess what? Everything about the banking crisis has ultimately become the cost of our ideology. Our ideology that says that we, by fiat, 1933, we by fiat can say with impunity, we are the lead economy in the world, we are the lead superpower in the world, and we will prove it by having the strongest economy and by consuming the most. That train just ended. It doesn't come back. You don't get this back on track. So the question of how long do we have here? The answer is we're being invited into something new. We're being invited into something new. If we actually look through all of these issues, you know, what's the market ups and downs? Where are these things going? Listen, people. If you think that you sitting behind your E-Trade, buying 1,000 shares of this and 1,000 shares of that, we're actually driving Wall Street, I'm going to break some bad news to you. Quant funds long ago took over the street. Somebody asked how the markets could go down 777 points and up 400 points and then down 300 and then somewhere else. You know the answer to that? Because of the fundamentals, man. It's value investing. Is that what it is? Have you ever been to Vegas? Has anybody ever been to Vegas? There's a thing called the house, and there's a thing called the sucker. That's the way it works. There's a thing called the house and a thing called the sucker. The house actually is the one that not only makes the rules, but actually allows you to kind of believe that you're actually maybe winning sometimes, losing sometimes, but netting out you're pretty much winning until you're not. And then you're losing, and you're losing a lot. Well, let me give you a little window in the house that is an important window into the house, just in case you're wondering where you should invest. If you put money in stocks right now, or if you have put money in stocks over the last 2.5 years, you are betting against the house. The house, oddly enough, is a phenomenon called automated quant funds. Now, what does an automated quant fund do? It's actually very fascinating. In fact, if you want to actually get your own kind of little window into this, ask yourself why it is that if you actually go onto CNBC or your Squawk Box or whatever you want to do to track your stocks or your little Bloomberg window or anything else, just start making a note of the 5 or 10 top gainers and top losers on the Dow and the S&P and on the NASDAQ. Now what's fascinating is then correlate the top gainers and top losers against the existence of a single press release or any statement coming from the company that could have indicated anything about what the company is actually doing. Just do that. It's kind of fun. Just go, okay, here's the company Verenium. Verenium lost 68% of its market cap, or 36, or some bizarre number yesterday. Okay, so go in and tell me why Verenium lost so much market cap that day. They didn't say anything. In fact, they haven't said anything for a while. They were actually sitting on their hands. And all of a sudden the market got enraged and took all their value away. Right? No. Wrong. What is actually happening is a computer, and by the way, we have actually decoded a number of the computers so we can actually track who is playing the racket so we can understand who the house is. There's an interesting house, and the house actually says, I know how to induce people to play up volatility. And so what I'll do is make something look like a gainer or a loser, and I have money that is going to come out of the hands of the day traders who go, wow, that one dropped a lot, so my fundamentals, head and shoulders. I know head and shoulders. I know where to jump in. I know where to jump out. Wrong answer. House knows that you know that. And so what it'll do is it'll trade a volatility spread to actually induce you to come in and invest. And by the way, don't believe me. Do what I just said. Just look at gainers and losers. You can do this easily. You don't have to have complex computer algorithms. Just look at gainers and losers, look at their press statements, and tell me why markets can move 50% up and down on a stock on any given day with no material change in the company. And the answer, which you're supposed to believe, is, oh, that's about fundamental investors who are actually load balancing their portfolios. Yeah, it's actually true. Fundamental investor is actually a machine. It actually knows how you're playing. It actually induces you to play. It actually lets you play. And it lets you spend your 401ks and your hard-earned retirement and a whole bunch of other things. And the beauty of it is, you're told by your government, hold for the long. Great. I feel so much better. I lost 80% of my retirement account. That's great. I'm awesome. That's wonderful. People, let's get to the core of this. There's a fundamental human problem with this game. There's a reason why you go to Vegas for vacation, but you don't live there. There's a reason for that. And the reason for it is if you keep playing the house, you don't keep playing. That's why it's called a vacation. You go, you come back, you tell your friends, man, I felt really good. I was at craps, it was going really well, and I lost it all. And they go, yeah, I did that too. And everybody feels better. But you do that for a weekend. You don't do that for a lifetime. You don't do that for a lifetime. Where are we going? What are we going to be about? Let me tell you about an alternative future. An alternative future. I had the privilege of standing on East New Britain, on the northernmost prominence of East New Britain in Papua New Guinea 6 weeks ago. I was there to help imagine an entire new economy for a country which by most accounts is the second most corrupt country on the planet. That's an interesting place to start. If you're going to start a brave new world, why don't start in the most corrupt place on the planet? Because, hey, if you got a mountain, make it tall. Give you something to work for. Now, a funny thing happened. I was actually standing in the city of Rabaul. Rabaul is a city of 10,000 people. It's been continuously occupied for, most archaeologists estimate, 35,000 years. 35,000 years. And up until about 80 years ago, they made it for 35,000 years with no currency. Isn't that amazing? You couldn't do that. Like, how could people do that? Because you need money, man. You need to be able to do this stuff. And not only did they live, they thrived. They actually loved their life. You know, they loved it so much when in 1983 a volcano started erupting, and then it really went nuts in 1986. It actually started erupting and it was dumping 6 inches of ash on their town every day, and guess what? The people didn't move. Isn't that funny? 6 inches of ash every day falling on your head and you don't move. Well, why not? Well, because they believe in a thing called common property. You know what common property is? Common property is a notion that says it's all ours, whatever it is. Sometimes it's very fertile, sometimes it's spitting out lava and ash and a bunch of other things, but it's ours. Ours, not mine, not yours, ours. And, are you ready for this? We don't move just because it's a little uncomfortable. And a little uncomfortable means since 1986 it's been raining ash and rock on the village, and they still haven't moved. Now the World Bank put together a very large book. It's about this thick, 2,000 some odd pages. They released it in 2005, I believe, which said no one should live in Rabaul ever again. Because smart people in Australia have concluded that Rabaul sits next to an active volcano. Wow. So which part of the active volcano bit was the part that you needed to be smart about? The stuff that's hitting your head, the giant pillar that goes 30,000 feet into the air with steam and dust and crap that then falls down on your head, which, by the way, if you ever have a chance to do it, I highly recommend standing under an active volcano, particularly if you're bald. It's fascinating to actually have the opportunity to greet the earth for the first time. And I've told people in all my life the most valuable experience I ever had was being the earth's first impression of humanity. Standing under a volcano and welcoming new crap that was falling on my head going, ha, I'm your first impression of humanity. I mean, how many times do you get to do that? How many times do you actually get to welcome dirt into the universe? Most of our life is spent getting rid of dirt, and here I was being Earth's first impression of humans, which is really cool. I highly recommend it. It's like a great destination kind of play, and if you don't mind a little bit of dust, it's an awesome trip. It's a place called Rabaul. You fly into it. It's awesome. It's really a great experience, and what's beautiful about it is you realize humanity has coexisted with this for 35,000 years. If humanity has existed with that for 35,000 years, maybe they can teach us something. So I asked a question. Now, I'm politically insensitive. You all know that by now. But here's what I asked. In the 1930s, a very famous ethnographer called Margaret Mead went to East New Britain and actually studied the Tolite and the Baining and the Comgee tribes. And she observed something. She observed whenever they got together for large social events, weddings, funerals, all kinds of civil celebrations, they had these long strands of shells that were on rattan fibers. And what would happen is that they would exchange shells. The most shell exchange that took place happened at weddings. And Margaret Mead decided that these people actually bought and sold their women because she knew that that was a dowry, because that's the way it is in the rest of the world. So these people are exchanging value for their women, therefore they're heathens, therefore they actually have the selling of women as part of their tribe, of their culture, and therefore they're not quite civilized. Well, you know, I actually thought, I wonder if that's true. I don't know. So I'm going to actually ask whether or not the thing, that long strand of shells, is actually called shell money. So I asked them, I said, is that shell money? They said, yeah, that's what it is. I said, is that what your grandparents would have called it? And now I'm talking to the provincial administrator of Papua New Guinea, and tears well up in his eyes. And he said, no, we actually never wanted it to be called money. I said, well, why not? He goes, well, because we don't think that money is a very good thing. Oh, 35,000 years, you figured out money isn't a good thing. So you might be onto something. Why are you doing the money thing right now? Well, because that's what it means to be civilized. I said, well, tell me what it used to mean. What did those shells used to mean? Well, what those shells used to be is a thing called taboo. Now, mind you, we've actually corrupted that word too. Taboo used to mean the honorary exchange of things that permuted value that went beyond what could be expressed in simple transactions of barter. Taboo was actually a conveyance of honor and respect. It had nothing to do with commerce. It turns out that when the bride's family was actually at a wedding, what was happening was everybody was actually showering a gift of generosity on the bride's family for contributing to the rebirth of the next generation. It was an honor, it was a bestowal of a gift to the family who was giving back fertility and life to the community. It wasn't about value. It was about values. And for 70 years, development experts have gone into this place that survived for 35,000 years and said, well, if you could just get your money thing sorted out, we could work with you. People, what's the new world look like? Maybe like the old world. Is that too radical to assume that somebody that's lived for 35,000 years in perpetual harmony with nature and with the world around them has nothing to offer us because we're so freaking smart that we know that we need to sell our debt to support our currency, which is now in default, which is now being foreclosed, which is now being subject to all the pressures of all of the economic systems that we see. We get it and they don't. Or is it possible that we could learn something from the notion of what custom and what taboo and what a number of other things that actually other people figured out a long time ago mean, and maybe incorporate some of those things into our worldview.